welcome on the Barricades. My name is Boyan Stanislavski. I will be your host today. Dr. Maria Cherna couldn't make it, the usual co-host of the show. However, I have for you two great guests, Bozhin, Traykov, and Arto Artinian. Welcome to the show.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and just to remind our viewers and listeners, this is the second part of today's release of On the Barricades, where we're discussing Bulgaria and the tense situation in Bulgaria after certain audio leaks were, audio files were leaked, which revealed the complete, total, utter dependency of Bulgaria. And of course, the person the institution, the entity exercising power is the United States through its embassy, which is referred to as the embassy in the audio leaks that I mentioned. I spoke about that more in the previous segment, so you can listen to my opening remarks then, and also to the previous episodes of On the Barricades, where we discuss those audio leaks in details. And now, Bozhin, because I kind of interrupted you, I had to interrupt you because we have this agreement with our viewers that we're not going to exceed 30 minutes when we discuss here and when we record our programs. So you said that you are basically convinced that the Americans are resorting to this va-banque game where they can win everything or lose everything, and they have no other choice because apparently the local owning class, you were not certain whether we should really refer to them as national bourgeoisie,
No, I don't think that.
Applying the strict Marxist terms, but I don't want to go into the theory of it right now. But let's say people who own stuff in Bulgaria, okay, just to to put it that way, that they seem to be in strong opposition to the course that those people that are currently the top parliamentary political representatives in Bulgaria, that they are about to embrace, which means full support for Ukraine, full support for the American imperialism, that's pretty much it. They are against it because they can lose everything they have acquired so far, and that's actually a very rational fear, because I fear not only they can lose their wealth, but we can actually lose our statehood. I mean, to the extent that it even exists, right? But we still have some institutions, some structures, some regulations, some laws that are adhered to. Not many, though, but still, I mean, for as long as we have a state, then we can still try and move around and find political solutions. But when the statehood is gone, then, then we don't have any instruments. We have no modus operandi, basically, right? We have to wait until things shape up again and we see what our fate is going to be. Maybe someone said it, I think Arto, you said it off camera once when we discussed that or maybe it was you, Bozhin, sorry, I don't, my memory is not very good, that when Bulgaria is lost, when the Bulgarian statehood is lost, we're going to be like the Kurds, basically. That's the situation. And I don't know whether that's going to be the case, but there is opposition. There is opposition in the society. There is opposition in the working class, if you like. And there is opposition, of course, among the wealth owners in Bulgaria. So the American embassy and this clique in the parliament, they go against everyone, everything, and every entity that has any agency in Bulgaria. Am I correct?
I would say so. Actually, the situation is so kind of hectic and so bizarre right now. There are all kinds of rumors. For example, yesterday there was these alleged rumors that the Americans have been trained Azov battalions, people here, Azov battalion Ukrainians who are ready to strike in the moment of some kind of disobedience, civil disobedience, or some kind of massive large protests against the government, and create a form of Maidan here, which some who were participants in the protests against the president. I guess I should kind of clarify here for the viewers that on top of this whole situation, there were protests organized by well-known NGOs that are linked to these networks of influencing public opinion, that are linked to American funding. They organized protests for the support of the government once these recordings were leaked, because they were sensing that there would be an outrage and an outcry, and against the president, Radev, who expressed his kind of disgust with these recordings and very kind of vocally said that that the coalition should not, on moral grounds, make this government, knowing all we know from the recordings. But nevertheless, there are all kinds of rumors here of military, of paramilitary organizations that are ready to be to go once the signal is given. And knowing what I know from the history of NATO, the history of the CIA, the history of American imperialism, I'm not going to be surprised this is the case, because we know, for example, of the operations Gladio during the Cold War in Western Europe, that such tactics were used, that such terrorist tactics were used and then were blamed on the left in Italy and in other places in Europe. So it's not as crazy as these rumors sound, as conspiratorial as they sound. I'm not really ready to kind of dismiss them, and it might be the case.
Okay,
now, whether they they will resort to these brutal measures, kind of the measures that have been resolving to again in Latin American countries during the era of dictatorships in the 60s and 70s, whether they will result back to that, I can't tell, because I think they would still try to save face. But
yeah, sure. I think it's going to be difficult for them to save face in these circumstances. Yeah. But then, Arto, let me go to you. So we have rumors. Okay, we have rumors. There is no evidence for it that Azov thugs are trained in Bulgaria or are deployed in Bulgaria in secret locations in order to strike at the potentially protesting people in Bulgaria who are going to be protesting against dragging Bulgaria into the Ukrainian war. And those protests would manifest themselves as demonstrations against the government, which is a completely compromised government even before it's actually formally in power. It's already compromised because of the leaked recordings where you can see that everything is manually managed by the American ambassador in Bulgaria. So we have a very, very, I would say, tense and dense, situation. Do you think it's possible? What's your take? Do you think they could really be having Azov Nazi thugs in Bulgaria in order to disperse protests? Because obviously they cannot count on the police. Moreover, they cannot even count on the military, probably, because we're going to talk about that later. There is an open letter from the military. It's a ridiculous situation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I hope not, but I think anything is possible. I think if that were to happen, however, if foreign terrorists were used to initiate political violence in Bulgaria against Bulgarian people, citizens peacefully protesting, I think that has dangers in itself for the people who organize that kind of violence too, because there are differences between the situation in Bulgaria and what happened in the Ukrainian Maidan or what happened in Latin America in the 1970s, I think. First of all, the use of secret terrorist cells that initiate violence during public protest, Bozhin is right. It's an, as we know from history, is an age-old, well-used and well-proven tactic. So that's certainly possible, and that would be a horrific provocation. But I think if we go to the historical record, that kind of violence in Latin America was necessitated because there was widespread political organizations that were against the imperialists who were in control of, for example, Chile or Argentina or Brazil. In Bulgaria today, I don't think there's a widespread organized political force against the general trajectory of Bulgaria being kind of like a second-class member of the EU, member of NATO. I don't think there's an organized political force, with the exception of remarks that Vozrozhdeny has made, right? And of course, you can argue that it's true. Vozrozhdeny is the number 3 political force in parliament, maybe even closer to number 2 at this point, right? But And if Vozraždenie begins to organize massive public and other forces in Bulgaria, like the movement for peace and neutrality, if their protests begin to draw out tens of thousands of people, then I think the preconditions for such a terrorist attack increase, right? Because as more people publicly become politically activated in search for peace and against the drawing of Bulgaria in the war in Ukraine, then the probability of such a terrorist attack in order to force the situation becomes more likely. The second thing is, can Ukrainian terrorists be used in Bulgaria? I think that can only happen, and here I'm guessing, that can only happen if there's a sufficient support for that within the Bulgarian police and security services. If there's sufficient opposition to that by the Bulgarian police and Bulgarian secret services against such forces on the level of rank and file, then I don't see how such terrorist attacks could be useful because they would be very quickly destroyed.
There will be no repression to follow up from that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the repression would be counter-repression against the terrorists, who are essentially would be attacking Bulgarian citizens who are doing peaceful protests. So I think everything depends on where the critical mass of Bulgarian law enforcement, police, and military are at this point, politically speaking. Are they with the new government, which is clearly illegitimate, according to the constitution, or are they against it? Or are they waiting to see, which would be the same thing as being against, because they're not actively going to support the use of such terrorist violence. So I think we don't know the answers. Hopefully, there is a critical mass of Bulgarian law enforcement and military and police who are against such provocations used by external forces, which would send the signal that if you use such external forces, because they're going to be very small numbers, they will be isolated and thus quickly destroyed, or they would be irrelevant. So I don't know, but I think the probability is real the moment enough protesters, the moment the protests become large enough in Bulgaria against the drawing of Bulgaria in the war, the NATO-Russia war. So I think we have to see. We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know yet, and it could be also that the Bulgarian police, whatever secret police, has had their hand in the leaks, and there are many speculations about it.
Yeah,
by the way, we don't know. We don't know, of course, we don't know. But I think the leaks themselves are a very serious indicator that there is a disagreement on the part of the establishment. Hey guys, you're taking it a step too far. Okay, so Bozhin, you were raising your hand, so go ahead and
just to add to, I really hope so. What Arto is saying, that there isn't enough of clandestine support for these groups, if they exist. Again, allegedly, it's alleged that they exist. So we don't really have proof of that. But let's not forget that what we learned from the recordings, from the leaked recording, is that the current government is ready for purges in all of these institutions, in all of these forms of secret services,
which might also be met with opposition.
Intelligence. Sorry.
Which might also be met with opposition. This kind of
yes,
purging rampage.
It doesn't get to the purges, and then because then it will be kind of lost cause. Like, we should hope that the attempt for purges of these institutions would create opposition enough that for them to not succeed. And the other thing is that signals political repression is that just recently, I think today, the news is that 2 deputies from the revival party Vozraždenie have been ignited by the chief prosecutor of the republic. So there are indications that there would be some kinds of
but let's be fair here, because the general prosecutor, the kind of the most important prosecutor in Bulgaria, like Ivan Geshev, by the way, right?
Geshev, yes.
Yeah, he's been used, and the institution that he's leading has been used for various manipulations recently, and we've seen all kinds of games being played with it. So it might not necessarily be a signal for repression of a concrete and specific movement, but it might just be part of those games that are being played. And I'm not exactly even sure where the whole thing is going, but that just shows like how much of a mess the whole thing is. And in this mess, the Americans are trying to exercise their nonsense. But Bozhin and Arto, I want to talk now about this guy who seems to be the most hawkish, the most dangerous, the most unhinged supporter of the war efforts, on the part of Ukraine, and supporter of the American understanding of what all countries, civilized countries, Western countries, whatever, should do, and how they should support Ukraine, namely sacrificing everything. Okay, and he is the guy, and I want maybe Bozhin, how about you just give us a sense of who this guy is, what his name is, what his political positions are, and then we can discuss about the opposition that is already there. I mean, we can already see opposition, including from the leadership of the Bulgarian military aviation. So this seems to be another very important indicator of the clash that's coming.
Okay, well, first thing to say is that this guy is kind of a NATO cadre or NATO kind of like a technocrat of some sort, because he is not exactly what you would call someone with a military career. He has not served in any military missions. His name is he is a professor of military engineering. His name is Todor Tagarev. He got his PhD from let me just check real quick, from Zhukovsky's Air Force Engineering Academia in Moscow in 1989 in then Soviet Union, and then in USSR. So he is educated in the kind of old traditional Soviet, the old traditional Soviet education. Then in 1994, he has finished some kind of a college, some kind of a military college in the United States, which is actually part of the Air Forces, like a college. And apparently he's specializing is in the Air Forces, right? So he is a kind of a person who is linked to the Air Forces, which we will talk about what the reaction to his. Now, what is interesting is that this is not the first time he was proposed by the same party, continuing the change, for defense minister. The first time was actually during the time of the coalition, when continuing the change was part of the government that was in the beginning of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and the special military operation. And then the defense minister was made to resign because he refused to call the operation war on national television. He refused to call the military operation, the special military operation, war, and and as a matter of fact, as far as I know, war has not been declared since Vietnam. I'm not even sure if Vietnam was even declared war. So let's be clear on this, that internationally, war has not been declared for a long, long time. Everything that the United States has done so far, Iraq, all of their kind of interventions have not been defined as wars. So I think this is important to consider. So the proper language, international language, is a military operation. So I think in that case, the former defense minister was right. Then this guy Tagarev was the proposition to become a military minister, and everyone was against that because he was considered a dangerous war hawk, because he was considered that his candidacy was considered unacceptable for people like the Bulgarian Socialist Party, which was part of this coalition, one other party which we should just mention, it's called There Is Such People, but anyway, they were part of this coalition. So, and so which was the fourth party? I'm kind of like,
okay, let's not get too technical. Okay, let's just focus.
It doesn't matter, but the fact of the matter is that Tagarev was proposed to be a minister of defense, And there is a lot of reason to believe that he will be a war hawk, that he will kind of go the extreme line of let's give everything to Ukraine. And what Bulgarian society is most worried about is including including military force, including sending troops to Ukraine, sending Bulgarians to fight in this war, in this conflict. Well, we know it's a war, but it's not pronounced war in international law. So anyway, we fight in this conflict, and that is the indication. He has been saying his intention to send everything, every kind of military equipment, any kind of weaponry Bulgaria owns, since the time he was proposed as defense minister, so way back a year and a half ago. Another thing that is also very concerning is what one of the leaders of the party called the Left, Levica, has alleged. Rumen Radev, who was actually a former interior minister, so he must have some information. He has said that Tagarev has been working for the Ukrainian military for a period of about 3 years. So it's not clear whether this person is not directly.
What kind of work was he doing for them?
In some kind of
Advisor,
yes, some kind of an advising work in his capacity of being a NATO NATO
expert or something like that.
NATO
Okay,
expert, yes.
and now we know now we know that the Bulgarian the leadership of the aviation defense force they came up with a statement where they reject the kind of his repeated calls in various TV studios for transferring all the MiGs that we have, all the Suhois that if we have any Suhois, I'm not sure anymore. But to transfer everything to Ukraine doesn't matter. That this is the strategy. This must be the strategy. There's no discussion. This is the only way to go about the whole thing. And when you get the generals writing a public open letter saying that we reject these kind of statements, we are absolutely disagreeing to promoting those views on public TV stations, public radio stations, because they are endangering the sovereignty and security of Bulgaria. And then they quote the constitution that they are obliged to defend Bulgaria. So it really seems to be, the Americans are really making a huge mess, have already made a huge mess out of it. And I really doubt it. I really doubt it that they can succeed. Or I don't know, maybe I'm too optimistic now, or I want to believe they will fail in Bulgaria. But I think what is important to consider here is that referring to what was been said previously about the potential participation of Ukrainian terrorists on Bulgarian soil, dispersing violently demonstrations that are going to that they are foreseeing could happen. That's I think also very, very risky. We don't know whether this is the case. We don't know whether they are actually present on Bulgarian soil. But if this is, let's just, for the sake of this conversation, let's just say that there is a possibility that it could actually occur. Then I think they are going to be against the entire public. They're going to be against pretty much everyone, okay? And they're going to be up against people who have nothing to lose, because we're so poor in Bulgaria. We're so poor that, you cannot really threaten us in a kind of way, classical way, that we're going to, put you in jail. We're going to, take your wealth. We're going to confiscate your car or something like that. This is just, they're going to be up against a whole bunch of angry, frustrated people, and I'm not sure if they are really prepared for this kind of confrontation. What's your take, Arto?
Well, first of all, I think when the Air Force senior officers who signed the public letter, which was distributed, as Boyan, you referenced today, first of all, that's a very big step, because as we know, Tagarev is going to be the next Minister of Defense, right? I think the government is going to be voted tomorrow in Parliament, which means that the Air Force leadership, that's their boss. So before their new boss begins his first day of work, Air Force officers are taking a very big risk to their own careers because, of course, anybody who wrote that letter could be fired, right? Because they're essentially saying to their new upcoming commanding, chief, you're not the person that we think has the integrity to lead this position because you're actively disrespecting and humiliating the Bulgarian Air Force. Because in the letter, basically, by constantly criticizing the Bulgarian, Air Force's inventory, the old MiG-29s, which have not been updated for 30 years and are not able to fly as often as, but they're still flying. What the officers are saying is that this guy, Tagarev, is actively disrespecting their own officers' efforts to keep Bulgarian airspace safe and secure. He's belittling their ability as military people, of professionals of the highest order, which they are. And I think that's unprecedented for a minister of defense to make statements repeatedly, for a future minister of defense, or somebody who wants to be one, to make public statements which belittle the professionalism of the ministry that he's supposed to head. That can only make sense if he actively serves foreign forces. And I think it's despicable that somebody like that is now going to be the Minister of Defense. And I totally understand the position of the Bulgarian officers who are publicly taking this unprecedented step, because officers usually are not supposed to make political statements like that publicly against their own future chief. So I think this shows the level of disgust that exists within the Air Force for people like him, right? So I think that's definitely not going to help. And I think the second part is, Boyan, there is a percentage of Bulgarians who support this government wholeheartedly. And I think in Bulgaria, these are called the žoltopovetnicite, which I'm not sure how to translate, the yellow cobblestoners,
Yeah, but it doesn't mean anything to the West, to our Western audience.
So there's a small percentage
There's
a small percentage of highly educated, kind of liberal intelligentsia and their kind of families and college professors of some,
and including self-declared leftists,
Yes, self-declared leftists of the new left, which is not really the left, but it's people who are funded by grants, people who are funded by the non-government organizations directly funded by large foreign governments,
The so-called civic society institutions.
The so-called civic society, which are basically the main treasonous element, the main conduit through which foreign influence enters Bulgaria and destroys the political integrity of the political system. So I think they are very, very much in support of this new government and all of its ministers. So I think there is support, but I think they are a small minority. Some people have said maybe 5,000 to 10,000 people, let's say 20,000 people or 30,000 people out of 6.5 million is clearly not a democratic majority. So you're right. I think if dirty games begin, like Boyan says, to be used in Bulgarian politics, this is a very dangerous proposition because it'll subvert the law, it'll subvert the political constitution,
and it will throw Bulgaria into chaos, like complete chaos.
And I think it could activate hundreds of thousands of Bulgarians who until now have not been politically activated. It could activate them against them.
Yeah, because it's going to be the last resort, the last straw. I mean, they have to defend something, right? Like their very existence.
Yeah, Bulgaria, unlike other countries in Europe, is traditionally very tolerant. The Bulgarians are in general very kind of laid back in their political, but once they're activated, we have a history of very passionate politics. But in general, Bulgaria is not the center of bigotry in the European Union right now, is not the center of the most kind of nasty kind of politics. No, Bulgarians are generally speaking people of very mild, kind of trustful, generally well-educated until now about politics. So it would take a lot to really activate Bulgarians passionately into politics. But I think such extra legal and illegal steps could really activate Bulgarians and get them involved against these new types of illegitimate governments. I think.
Yeah, but I also think that, it's the question of there's only a certain amount of humiliation and damage, ethical, moral, political, that you can take. Because, many people have said that, oh, Boyan, you're getting carried away. I mean, no one's really getting excited about people revealing or tapes revealing that we are manually steered by the American embassy. That's been the case for like 20 years at least. So there's no reason to be so upset about it. It's just like how things are, ha ha ha. And to a certain extent, that's true. I mean, all those people who are going like, oh, how could this be? Like, yeah. It's just that now it's so clear. It's been displayed in such an audacious manner that the Bulgarians, calm as they are, and okay, it could be the case that they are now used, okay, to living in this horrendous conditions that were created after 1989, after this civilizational downgrade that's ongoing, by the way, is okay, right? Like, I mean, it's not okay in general. I don't think it's okay, but it's okay from the point of view of an average Bulgarian who's struggling to make ends meet, and he can take that, but he does not. But now it's like someone took this dirty piece of fabric and put it in a stinking substance and kind of slammed each and every Bulgarian on the face. I mean, this is just too much for even the most tolerant, most kind of obedient, even if you like, nation, society, whatever. What's your take, guys? So, please go ahead and give your closing remarks. Let's start with Bozhin.
Well, I think that actually some part of the so-called voters of discontinuing the change genuinely believe that continuing the change is going to create good conditions for small and middle businesses, that they're like it was part of the middle class that bought into this idea that these are people who are, and once again, I mean, I want to use this term self-colonization, even though I don't agree with the author who coined this term, but I like the term itself, this notion of self-colonization, this idea that actually Bulgarians are not civil, they're lacking some kind of a civilizational model, and they need to be forcefully civilized, forcefully Europeanized. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are buying into this narrative, which now we see how dangerous this is. But fortunately, they seem to be a minority. And even if there were people who kind of really believed in this kind of narrative, I think now they are starting to, or at least believe in the good intentions of continuing the change. They're starting to wake up to the realization that, no, it is actually a dirty concoction of political groups that are constructed by outside forces, let's say, outside imperial forces, and even those who were kind of like maybe dismissive a year ago and laughing at me about U.S. imperialism and thinking that there is no such thing, will now start to realize that this is not the case. I see it in everyday conversations. I have had some encounters with people that are starting to realize, oh, maybe actually what you were saying was not so far-fetched. Okay. And yeah.
All right, thanks. Yeah. And Arto, the last 2 minutes of the program go to you.
I think the extent and the effectiveness of external intervention in a country's internal politics is directly related to the strength of the political conversations and ideas and organization of inside the country itself. So the fact that the foreign embassy can so easily reshape the government in Bulgaria means that we Bulgarians have to really consciously focus on developing our own political language that's relevant for the overall general development and well-being of our society. We need to start detaching from the toxic vocabulary that's foreign to Bulgarians, like the language of European Union, bureaucratic language of civil society, and all these nonsensical terms that have no meaning to Bulgarian people. And I think we need to go back to our own history and also to our own current reading of the situation and develop our own political language. And I think that's the first step, to cleanse our language of foreign infections that are dangerous to our freedom, because they confuse people. They confuse us and they make us use language and words and phrases like civil society, like Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom against Russian invasion, as if that's such a black and white fact that ignores the previous 20 years of history, or by any other NGO developed foreign terms that confuse people into their thinking about what are Bulgarian national interests from the point of view of the majority of the Bulgarian people, the ordinary people whose political interests are underrepresented in the parliament. So I think that's the first step. I hope that we start to begin as a society to develop our own political language, which rejects the language of the imperialists. And by doing that, we will be able to understand, more people in our society will be able to understand what's happening to us, because we're not going to use the language of the political enemy, which are the outsiders in this case. We know who those outsiders are.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Bozhin. Thanks, Arto, for all the comments, insights, and observations. To our viewers, I want to thank you too for spending the time with us. And I hope you learned something interesting about the situation in Bulgaria. Go ahead and send your comments and questions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube, on Odyssey. We're also available on Substack, and also you can listen to the audio version of our podcast on SoundCloud and Spotify. And also don't forget to check out our website, thebarricade.online. And last but not least, if you consider these productions interesting and valuable, then you can support us financially via Patreon, PayPal, and the links are put in the description box of each and every video that you can find here. Thank you very much. See you sometime soon.